It's that time again. The annual conference of the American Society of Ag Consultants, otherwise known as ASAC, is going to be held in Fort Myers, Florida, this November 4th and 5th. Kurt Covington is one of 9 professionals who will address the conference. The other speakers who will cover a wide range of topics represent Florida Farm Bureau, Florida Citrus Commission, University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture, National Ag Law Center, Risk Mitigators and Advisors, Tyler Associates, as well as the lead economist for dairy at CoBank, and myself, Chrissy Wozniak from North American Ag. The day and a half of presentations will be followed by ag tours on Tuesday afternoon at Echo Farms, one of my favorite places here in Fort Myers. Attendees will experience farming at its most creative, with unique demonstrations, plants, and techniques being used to help farmers and urban gardeners in developing countries. A second tour at Echo will showcase simple technologies that can improve food, water, and shelter for millions of people. A third tour of a hydroponic grower is also being planned. For more information and to register, visit www.agconsultants.org. That's www.agconsultants.org. See you there. Many innovations for the agriculture industry show promise in the lab and controlled small plot settings, but fall short when it comes to capturing complete data from the field. From the start, Intent built its business on bringing efficiency and effectiveness to field trials, helping clients reach their business goals. Since then, Intent has unveiled its InVision software, which works in conjunction with Intent's farmer trials network of more than 1,500 growers to maximize data collection and quality. Today, Intent's sole focus remains the same, to equip agribusiness with better data. But the manner in which Intent is able to collect, interpret, and model that data is light years ahead of what was previously thought possible. To learn more about Intent, visit intent.ag. That's intent, INTENT.ag. Welcome to North American Ag Spotlight. I'm Chrissy Wozniak. I am so excited to talk to our guest today. I have the honor of hosting a passionate advocate for constitutional rights of American farmers, Mindy Patterson. She is president and co-founder of the Cavalry Group and is a national leader in advocating for and defending the constitutional and private property rights of law-abiding animal owners and animal-related businesses. Her firm specializes in challenging the infiltration of animal rights activism in government while ensuring due process and constitutional protections for its members. We're going to discuss the constitutional rights of the American farmer and learn some real ways that we can pitch in to help to protect these rights, not just for producers, but really for us all. And we're also going to talk about an incredible event that's coming up, the American Agri-Women Fly-In, that's going to be held in June that both Mindy and I will be at. So welcome to the show, Mindy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be with you.
Thank you. So let's start with your background. Can you take a couple minutes just to talk about who you are?
Sure. Well, I'm the youngest of 5 kids of 2 amazing parents from the World War II generation, and I was raised in California at a time when agriculture was revered and celebrated. And we weren't farmers or ranchers, but it was inherent in our daily lives to be grateful to those who grow and raise our food. It was just part of our daily living in California because we were surrounded by orange groves, avocado orchards, cattle ranching, etc. So, but I moved away from California almost 40 years ago, which is hard to believe, when I married my husband, Mark. But since 2009, I have served on various equine councils and associations, and it was through these associations that I first recognized the connection between the animal rights movement and their attack on private property. But in 2010, the Humane Society of the United States launched a very deceptive ballot initiative campaign in the state of Missouri, where we were living at the time, called the Puppy Mill Cruelty Prevention Act. And at the time, I was serving as head of the Missouri Equine Council, and this led me to have a seat at the table of an agriculture coalition that formed to push back against this ballot initiative from HSUS and other animal rights organizations. And it was during this campaign that my husband and I saw firsthand that there was a need for an organization to protect and defend the constitutional and private property rights of all law-abiding animal owners and animal-related businesses. So basically, we have members across the United States, including farmers and ranchers, but also pet producers, horse-drawn carriage companies, exotic animal exhibitors, deer farmers, etc. But we work daily, legally, legislatively, and do our best in the public relations sector to advocate for animal-related businesses.
Wow, that's incredible. And that really hits home for me. Back in the late 90s, I was fresh out of college. I started working for Sentinel Carriage Company in Niagara Falls. So I'm originally from Canada.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yes,
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
yeah, and I worked there for a few years at the time. And back in the 90s, everybody was just in awe to see horses. I drove carriage in Niagara on the Lake as well. And you felt like a celebrity, right?
Yeah.
And everybody was just, oh, can I touch your horse? Can I pet your horse? Well, I went and got career, and then when I was having my son, I was kind of on had a difficult pregnancy, but I didn't like, not doing anything. So I actually went back to Sentinel Carriage Company and said, "Hey guys, do you want to hire me back?" So I worked there again, and that was 2009. So really a 10-year span. What I found in 2009 was no longer, oh, look at your beautiful horse. It was, oh, poor
Sorry about
horse.
the barking. Oh, I'm
Oh,
going to have
that's
to
okay.
mute.
At that time, it was poor horse. Oh, that poor horse, over and over and over again. And I know most people in this world have not had to work, you know, 8, 10 hours with one animal and work, right? You don't have that opportunity these days. But I can tell you those horses were so well taken care of. We had such a deep relationship with them. They were so well fed. They were better fed, had better health care, had their needs met better than most human beings on the earth, 100%. Those horses lived, like I've known those horses since the 90s, and one just passed away this year that I drove in the 90s. Like these horses are so well taken care of. Uh, by the time I think, well, probably so from 2009 forward, I'd say another 5 years, that's when the protesters started. And I don't even know how the drivers could handle it. I don't know how the owners are lovely, lovely people. I know the entire family. And what they had to go through with these protesters was just degrading, disrespectful, dangerous. They caused carriage accidents.
Yeah.
This is not about the horse, and it's not about people. So
No.
explain to me what's going on. And this was only a 20-year span.
Mhm.
What is happening?
Well, right now, everybody's under attack. Farmers, ranchers, all animal related businesses, but the horse-drawn carriage industry specifically has really been in the crosshairs. And so much so that we got really tired of playing defense. You know, we have defended the carriage companies in St. Louis, in Chicago, in New York City. Just before Mayor de Blasio was elected mayor, if you recall, an animal rights group called New York for Clean and Livable Safe Streets was formed, which was a complete front for the animal rights groups to basically ban horse-drawn carriages. And they raised a lot of money on this animal rights organization to put Mayor de Blasio in office just so he would fulfill his promise. And we worked hand in glove with the New York carriages to push back. And they did an incredible job. We just helped them organize, to be honest with you. But they too endured exactly as you lined out and described as they, not only in New York, but everywhere. I mean, horse-drawn carriages are in the crosshairs all over the country. And so we got tired of playing defense. I mean, we played defense too much in the animal world where, you do everything you possibly can to meet or exceed regulatory expectations and be in compliance. And, these are horse-drawn carriages, as you know, have unexpected veterinary inspections and constant inspections and oversight and that kind of thing, rules to follow. And it's just an amazing industry, I think. And it's a wholesome family activity. It's everything as you lined out. It's just, I think it brings a lot of magic to the urban areas and that special human animal bond to the urban areas where most people may not have a connection with the horse, but this is their opportunity to be hands-on. So we got tired of playing defense. And about 6 years ago, we worked with some lawmakers in the state of Missouri to come up with a piece of legislation that we called the Working Animal Protection Act that prohibits local municipalities from banning lawful animal enterprise utilizing working animals, including horse-drawn carriages and animal exhibitors, working dogs. These animal rights groups are working overtime to pass local ordinances, state legislation, even federal bills to eliminate animal-related businesses. And just because it doesn't align with their ideology, they're banning them. And as we sit here, our bill has passed in Oklahoma, Arkansas, and even Texas. A version of it passed in Texas in 2023. And it's been very bizarre this year because the city of Dallas and the city of San Antonio in Texas, of all places, is under attack to ban horse-drawn carriages, despite the fact that it's the law it prohibits them from outright banning these legal, lawful businesses. But they're trying to do a workaround and say, oh, we're not going to take away your livelihood. We're not banning your business. We're just going to replace the horse with electric vehicles.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
Who's going to go for an electric car ride?
And the craziest part to me is that I can take a Justin carriage by myself and I can trot it down the road. That's how light these carriages are.
Oh, they're unbelievable. Yeah.
Loaded with people, right? On perfect bearing wheels, and you could back, in 2009, I could still argue with people and say, listen, this is so light. This horse is breathing and the carriage moves back and forth. This is not a hard job. They love going to work every day. They love going home and eating too, but they have a good work day and they're all fat, right? They're just walking all day, building their bone density. And
they're bred to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
And they love the work. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's gotten so bad even last year. I had my dog in Miami. I know there's a lot of crazy people in Florida. That's where we find them. But we had the dog and we were just walking on the beach and this group of young women, probably in their mid-20s, just started heckling us saying that dog should have boots on. It's hot out. I'm like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What is going on with these people? What do you think has contributed to this mental illness? Like sometimes when I watch Disney with my kids, I'm like, we've been indoctrinated to think that animals are humans now for my whole life. Is that the problem? Like, what is it, just that we're so far removed? What is it?
It's a combination of all the things you just mentioned. It's the media. I mean, the animal rights movement is a political agenda, and it has infiltrated to indoctrinate us to believe that animal use of any kind is inhumane. So they've done this through the media, through our schools, even through churches. Even food. Any retail grocery store, food outlet, you go and there's all this humane this and humane that, and a lot of it is subliminal. And I think people it's all been incremental. It's all incrementally altering Americans' views of animal use across the United States and really all over the world. And it's really frightening because to me, what it does also is diminish the sanctity of human life.
Yeah.
To make animals equal to humans is a very dangerous, slippery slope. And we are seeing the results of that in anti-private property and anti-human legislation that is becoming law across the country. And it's very alarming. And people just don't realize it. They think it's okay to dress their dogs up in clothes and push them in a stroller, and that's their freedom to do so. But it also imposes this subliminal message that dogs are equal to humans, and that just simply is not the case. It doesn't mean we don't love dogs. I have 5 dogs. I love dogs to pieces, but they're dogs. And, we have to just remember that in order to protect our constitutional rights and place in this world, we have to remember that we have dominion over the animals. So it's
Right,
important,
exactly.
and to be good stewards at the same time.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's where they get this hint of truth in their agenda, right? And I know I've been on this bandwagon for many years, seeing this attack on agriculture.
Hmm.
But I was at a conference, I guess 2 years ago now in Minneapolis, and, it was, an agriculture conference, but they had speakers there who were pushing this agenda, like, pushing it. It was the first time I'd really seen it out in the open. You see it and you can identify it. It's that saying, "Once you see it, you can't unsee it," and you see it all the
Yes.
time. This wasn't even that. This was just we are our goal is to create these public-private partnerships
Hmm.
across, and they would on the slides point out all of the different places in the world where they're doing this, and we are going to eliminate animal agriculture. And this is how we're going to do it. And they've become so much more brazen these days that nobody can deny it. And we just have to move past it being like, oh, that's just crazy people. No, this is actually part of the agenda. So can you tell me what you're seeing as what the agenda is and where did this come from?
Well, it is alarming, like you've said. And what I see is that husbandry is on the chopping block. That's
Yeah.
that's what's really concerning to me. As I said, it's incremental. They've just been moving the goalposts through the years, and they're becoming very brazen in the legislative push, and they are literally through ballot initiatives and other legislation. They are redefining what is considered humane through the lens of animal rights and environmental extremist, and um, they're just moving the goalposts. But it's all stems from this anti-human agenda, and it really is. I know some people will roll their eyes at that, but then again, I think people are starting to wake up and see it. I mean, if you are working to destroy our farmers and ranchers, I mean, and take away our food supply, what could be more anti-human than that? And forcing us to be reliant on foreign sources for our food supply, that's a matter of national security, of course, but it's very concerning. It's there's just This is a loaded topic because it is happening at rapid speed. Some days it just feels like a very heavy weight to carry, seeing all these things happen at once. And it really is, I'm sure you see it every day too, that it's just all these coordinated efforts are happening all at once. These NGOs and these um, well-funded animal rights groups, environmental groups are all working together. And our side, honestly, we all say we want to unite and work together, but that's been our Achilles heel, to be really honest with you, because a lot of these groups are working to basically save their own selves and not, for example, you know, um, the cattle industry is really truly in the crosshairs right now, and many, many different aspects. And that involve land use, water use, all these different things, infringement by the government, and so forth. Well, the pet industry has been in the crosshairs for at least 15 years, and it's all been incremental. But I wish we could all work together. There is a tie between the pet industry and the cattle industry, for example. And what we're seeing is through this regulatory and legislative push, all the words, all the language that they're using against us is the same. It's all the same. We're seeing this common language that's coming in to tighten the noose on animal producers and those who raise, breed, and work with animals, um, that are required to fall under the same purview as all these different industries, and they don't even realize that it's happening. It's crazy. So, not to be vague, I mean, I could get specific, but I mean, it really gets into the weeds of, um, things. For example, I'll give a quick example. One of the things in the pet industry that is happening is that they are, through academia, uh, there is, out of Purdue University, there's something called the Canine Care Certified Program that was born out of a lot of the pet store industry, but not the pet producers, if you will. And it's requiring pet producers to jump through a lot of regulatory hoops and to be subject to a third-party auditor, which is not from the United States. It's a global
Oh,
auditor.
man.
Well,
That's
now,
terrifying.
yes, it is terrifying. And so, but again, they're not a regulatory agency. This Canine Care Certified program is just now just another NGO, but they're the people who organized it think that they're going to put this forth to save everybody from the animal rights movement and truly what it's doing is feeding them to the wolves. And now
Yeah.
we're seeing other parallel things in the cattle industry that involve a third party auditor for inspections of cattlemen. And I'm just seeing all of these things align. And what it really boils down to, without getting into the weeds, is just all anti-private property. I mean, it really
Right.
is. It's not. It's certainly not about freedom or liberty, and giving people the choice to operate their business without infringement from the federal government. And it's really, the noose is tightening very quickly, and with all of these different groups. So, and the animal
Yeah,
rights groups are at the tip of the sword in making all of this happen.
definitely. Yeah. And it is really policy. I think so many people want to think it's fringe groups, and this is policy. And for example, in California, with the policy to try to dictate how animals are grown outside of the state.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm.
do you have any information? I've heard about the regulation that they want to put through in California about half-life or quarter life. Do you know any details about that one where the animal would have to live it's either a quarter or half of its natural life before it's slaughtered?
They're
Can you
trying this in
imagine in
California.
California? Yeah, yeah, I was at a conference last year that was talking about it, and, they're trying to get it pushed through. It's not yet, but imagine the implications of something like that, where you had to hold a cow for 3 to 12 years, depending on whatever age they decide to put the cow at, or chickens, right? And how disgusting our food would be.
Yeah.
It's completely insane.
Sounds like it mirrors Measure 16 from Colorado that they
Okay,
tried
I haven't heard of
to
that one.
push 2 years ago. Well, it's because it didn't make it onto the ballot, fortunately. They had
Okay.
too many issues in this ballot initiative, and the people on our side of the fight took it to court and won because it had to be a single issue. So the Supreme Court in Colorado voted unanimously to kick it off the ballot. But it'll be back. I mean, that's what these animal
Yeah.
rights groups do. But basically, it was exactly as you outlined. There were other things there too that was in the legislation in this Measure 16 in Colorado that wanted to not only require what you were talking about in not being able to slaughter meat animals till much later than they should be, but also attacking husbandry practices like palpating a cow, pregnancy testing, castration. But it also not only implicated livestock, but pet animals as well. So all the pet breeders were going to be criminalized for a lot of these practices, whether it was neutering your animals or artificial insemination was one that they considered equal to rape. They were basically criminalizing all these things for animals. And again, this goes back to what the point you originally brought up, is making animals equal to people. To call it rape of an animal to artificial, partake in the practice of artificial insemination, that's absurd. Everybody in agriculture is, rolling their eyes right now at the thought of that. mean, these are husbandry things that time-tested practices that have endured the test of time that we've been practicing for generations, but they want to take all that away. That is really scary. And, as somebody who shows up to the microphone to testify in opposition to a lot of legislation, and if we don't do that, we're writing testimony to oppose legislation. It is infuriating to see these animal rights people show up in the hearing room acting like they're the experts. And it
Yeah.
is absolutely infuriating. They act like we're all these monsters as we, raise, breed, and work with animals when they know nothing. Just because they care about animals doesn't mean they know about animal care. And that has become the focal point in all these hearings. That's the common theme. And it's very frustrating because these lawmakers, unfortunately, don't know the difference between animal rights and animal welfare. And there's a vast difference, as we all know. And it's just these lawmakers who aren't rooted in any kind of farming or ranching, or some of them don't even own a pet. And they're literally the judge, jury, and executioner of our livelihoods. And they don't know anything. And they're falling for the propaganda from these animal rights organizations to influence their vote on a piece of legislation that will be the nail in the coffin as to whether or not they can continue to proceed in doing what they love. And going back to the carriages, we're dealing with that right now all over the country because these carriage bans are popping up everywhere. But it's really sad to see people show up to these hearings and almost plead with the committee, or the city council to say, defending their business that they've participated in for 30, 40 years or whatever, how many years, and defending how we take great care of our animals. We do all these things right. And these lawmakers don't have a clue. So how would they know or care as to whether you're doing things right? But they're listening to the activists, which is really, that should be the wake-up call for everybody.
Yeah.
The wake-up call, if I were to say anything to your listeners, it's that. It's like, please, please, please educate your lawmakers at the local, state, and federal level as to the fact that these animal rights groups and environmental extremists too are not experts. You're the expert. If you are raising, breeding, working with animals as a farmer, rancher, whatever industry you're in, you are the expert. You should be the one to talk to the lawmakers, not these activists. But these activists are bullies too. They apply a lot of pressure. They have a lot of money, so I'm sure they're writing big fat checks to campaigns for donations and so forth. It's difficult to compete with that, but I'm a firm believer that the truth will prevail. That people will wake up to the fact that if we don't defend animal related business in America, what exactly are we going to do for food? What
Right.
exactly will we do? I mean, the pet industry is in peril and has been for quite a long time. So all these things are shrinking, fewer farms, fewer farmers. Same thing goes for the pet industry and everything else we've talked about. It's just people are tired of the heavy weight of constantly having to play defense, which is why we came up with that Working Animal Protection Act to head them off at the pass and prevent them from banning lawful businesses just because it doesn't align with their ideology. And so that's what I would say. Let's go on offense more. Agriculture needs to do that. We need to think of legislation to counter this movement that is destroying farmers and ranchers and destroying America. So we need to go on offense.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And to go on offense instead of defense,
Mhm.
I can hear, producers saying, this is my farm, this is my home. What do I do if they show up here? What do I do if I'm encountered at a cow show or a horse show? Do you have advice for them on how to handle those situations?
Absolutely. If it's private property in which you are showing your animals, and oftentimes these fairs are considered private property, even though they're, rented uh, land, if you will, for the time being. Oftentimes the fairgrounds are private property. The fair director typically needs to, or whatever the event is, because it's private property, you need to get your county sheriff to organize a protest zone, and they can exercise their First Amendment right out there in the weeds, maybe the poison ivy grove there in the median of the busy
I love
highway.
it.
But they can protest. Let them protest.
Mm,
Let them scream from their little protest zone. And that's what we've been organizing and helping our members deal with all over the country, because they do organize, but their bark is usually a lot louder than what it is when they show up. Fortunately, these people are keyboard warriors. They're really good at bullying people and scaring them on social media. But when push comes to shove, when you think 400 people are going to show up, it turns out there's like 12. And so when the
right.
12 protesters show up, and they can get ugly, and they're trying to influence people to say that, what they're doing is inhumane or terrible for the animals. And oftentimes what it does is just the opposite of what they intend. Most Americans are like, I cannot stand these people. They're harassing these poor carriage people or fair exhibitors or whatever it may be. And people don't like that. Nobody likes bullies, and Americans don't like being lied to or about. So I think Americans have had enough of this. And I think that they see these people and these radicals protesting what they know is um, counter to what they know is the truth, what is the truth. And oftentimes, like I said, it backfires on the animal rights people.
Yep. Yep. That's the way it should be. And we definitely need a united front in this for sure.
Yeah.
Um, let's move on to property rights. I
Mhm.
discuss property rights a lot on this show and have for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Is I'd say one of the main issues in the US, in North America, actually all across the world when you think about it and you watch, you learn what's going on. So can you explain the idea behind 3030, Agenda 21, and how that ties into what's happening today?
Absolutely. Well, do you want me to talk about the environmental movement, or do you want me to talk about 30 by 30 specifically? Um,
I, I guess, maybe a little bit of each and how they tie together.
sure. Um, Well, the environmental or green movement works the same way that the animal rights groups operate, honestly. They force law-abiding people who make their living raising, breeding, and working with animals, or working the land. They push everybody into defense mode, as we've already talked about, and against their lies and misinformation, essentially weaponizing guilt and forcing people to play defense and capitalizing on their narrative that we are harming the land and the planet. And yes, we must all be good stewards of the land, as we've talked about, but farmers and ranchers need to recognize that there are really bad people and organizations behind this plan of what they're now calling sustainability or sustainable agriculture. Sounds great, but farmers and ranchers, by definition, have always been sustainable. And this anti agriculture, anti private property agenda comes with a regulatory lineup intended to tighten the noose on not only the farmer and the rancher and their ability to use their land as they see fit, but also destroy ownership of private property. And they're doing that through this regulatory reform that makes it impossible for them to operate. Um, 30 by 30, I do have a couple notes just because there's a lot to this. As you probably know, it was Biden's executive order. Um, the number is 14008, and they called it, and I just love all these deceptive agendas because even the animal rights groups do this. They call things, they give things names like it just sounds like a crisis we need to solve. We have to vote for this because we have to save the earth. We have to save, the earth and animals and all these things. So they named it Tackling the Climate Crisis at Home and Abroad. Okay, we certainly, people are acting like that's a valid thing to fight for. Um, but because of these policies that's coming out of this 30 by 30, farmers and ranchers are literally fighting for their very existence. To go back to 2001, A lot of the things that are in Biden's 30 by 30 were in Clinton's and the Clinton administration's roadless rules. You're probably too young to remember that, but it basically denied access and management and use to 58.5 million acres of forest and service lands. And he signed that into law in 2001. And both the U.S. Park Service and the U.S. Forest Service, because of that, are currently the largest landowners in the United States. And the U.S. currently owns 640 million acres of land across 50 states. I didn't think the federal government was supposed to own land. But both agencies have over $11 billion for each infrastructure expenses. And the Clintons' roadless rules caused major devastation in our Western forests due to the zero management, basically, because roadless rules meant no human could enter the area, or you weren't allowed to carve any roads to manage the forests. And accordingly, the Japanese pine beetle moved in and decimated our pine tree forests, setting things up for catastrophic wildfires due to the dead trees that were left standing because of this rule and lack of management. So then cut to Biden's, 30 by 30. Under 30 by 30, the current administration's executive order has what is a task force, and they're calling it a collaborative effort between the Department of the Interior, the Departments of Agriculture and Commerce, National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration, and the White House Council on Environmental Quality, all to be called the America Beautiful Task Force. So according to Biden's America the Beautiful Task Force, this group would pursue a locally led and voluntary nationwide effort to conserve, connect, restore the lands, waters, and wildlife to restore 30% of our lands and waters by 2030, sorry. And by the way, that's just a few years away. A little scary.
We're almost there.
2030 is just a few years away. And so 30 by 30 would double the 640 million acres of land owned by the federal government by setting aside additional 680 million acres of land and water in the U.S. by 2030.
Wow.
That's just, as we said, that's just a few years from now. So 30 by 30 expands the federal land ownership by conserving 30% of our lands and waters by 2030, but conserve and conserving are undefined in this executive order. There is no statutory or constitutional authority whatsoever for this executive order. And anyway, so by removing all of the 680 million acres of water and land, where will we grow our food and fuel and fiber? And this is a direct assault on our farmers and ranchers. It's a direct assault on farms and ranches and private property, and while taking more land out of production. I mean, it's Agenda 21, just right out there, and it's happening. That is the plan. And it all boils down to ownership of private property and telling farmers and ranchers that they can't use their land as they see fit. It's really scary what's going on. And this executive order was put into place long before Biden put his hand on the Bible and took his oath of office, because he put this was the first thing he did. It was already in place when he took office. I'm sure you remember
within
that.
like 48 hours, right?
Yes. I mean, it was the first thing he laid out, other than eliminating the XL pipeline, of course, and our energy independence. But this is a direct assault on farmers and ranchers and our food producers in the United States. And the vast majority of land that the federal government owns is in the Western states. And so the federal government now wants to take more land out of production because of this executive order. This is really sad, because during the settlers' expansion to the West, many states weren't necessarily a utopia due to the limited water resources. So how will people live if the federal government destroys our energy and water resources? It's also my understanding that Biden is currently dismantling. We have, I believe it's 6,000 not aquifers, but electric generated, what are those called? I'm having a brain freeze.
Dams, like the power stations.
Power stations. Thank you.
Yep.
the electric water power stations. We have 6,000 across the United States, and he's dismantling them.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, California has been one of the first states to
Right.
have them disappear, but it's happening all over the country. And let's face it, certain states are uninhabitable without the benefits that came along with food production in a lot of these areas, like air conditioning, like access to water. And again, as we've said a minute ago about the animal rights movement, the people who are actually involved are the experts. And so same applies here. Farmers and ranchers are the experts when it comes to a lot of these things. And the federal government is coming in like they just are going to tell us all what to do. And it's an infringement. They're taking control. And Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, as you know, is all about inventory, monitor, and control. I mean, that's how I try to describe it to people who are
That's a good way.
new to that. And they're literally inventory, monitor, and controlling everything, every aspect in our lives with smart meters and, radio tags and controlling how far you can drive to work and limiting how often you can fly on an airplane. That's all coming. And that's all part of this as well. This Biden's 30 by 30.
Right. So we've identified a lot of these problems. Now we need to take action.
Yes.
So can you outline some of the steps that we can take at the local, state, and federal levels where we can actually execute?
My counsel to everybody would be pay attention to what's going on in your own backyard and your state in the legislature. You can sign up for alerts, and certainly know who your lawmakers are.
Yeah.
Know who your county commissioner is. That's really important. Attend the meetings. Know the people on your city council. What's going on with the planning and zoning commission too? What's going on in your own backyard is essential. But pay attention to what's going on in the legislature and what ordinances are passing at the local level, what legislation is passing at the state level. We have a bill in my state of Oklahoma that's trying to give the state control of our water across the state of Oklahoma, of all places. It's fortunately, I don't think the bill's going to pass or go anywhere, but just the thought that some lawmaker drew this up and they think that's okay to give the state. Oh, and by the way, the bill gives not just the state control, but the decisions would be made by a board of bureaucrats. So unelected bureaucrats would be making the decision as to how we would use our water and where the water would go. But what would that do to property values and land values? It would just plummet. And that's what these people want. It's really sad. So pay attention, get to know your lawmakers. And I really urge people always to write for your rights. Write op-eds and articles in your local papers and publications. I think it's really important for people who are actually engaged in the battle to educate people as to what's really going on. And let's all work together to go on offense. Think about, gosh, what kind of legislation could we put forth to provide protections? It's sad that we even have to have that conversation because you would think that the Constitution would be all that we need. But unfortunately, we've had to take an extra step to protect our constitutional rights, which, is there to protect our God-given rights. So,
yeah, that's it. And we will be taking a step and headed to DC on June 2nd to 4th.
yes.
Which is our American Agri Women annual fly-in, which we've opened up to all women in agriculture and natural resources. So any listeners that want to join us, go to americanagriwomen.org/fly-in and get some information. There's still room. I think we're closing registration May 9th or May 10th, I believe. But tell me why you think it's important, why you decided to go to fly-in this year. And we've talked about the stakes now, but why is it so important for us to unite right now?
Well, as long as I've been involved with American Agri Women, the focus has always been on policy. And we know that legislation is ground zero in protecting our rights. So engaging with American agri-women is a force multiplier for me and an opportunity to work with other women across the United States who are literally boots on the ground in their region already. I mean, everybody who's a part of American agri-women are already in the trenches. So that's why I say it's a force multiplier. So bringing us all together in Washington, D.C. for fly-in to guide lawmakers in passing legislation to protect our freedom, our right to private property for American farmers and ranchers and other producers is very, very exciting. It's a very important venture that I feel quite honestly very honored to take part in.
I couldn't agree with you more. So now many people in our industry, many people that are connected to the ground, um, do rely on faith. What's the role of faith in your life, and how does it affect your work?
Well, America was divinely founded, and we've been given this gift of freedom and liberty by God. So working to protect these God-given rights for our members um, would not be possible without faith in God and listening for his direction. I mean, we are where we are today, meaning with the Cavalry Group, because we felt led by God to serve and help others, to provide a shield to protect them um, when they felt vulnerable. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And where can people find you?
You can find us at thecavalrygroup.com. Just make sure you spell Cavalry Cavalry. Some people spell it like the church. They end up at a church website, but it's thecavalrygroup.com. Our toll-free number is also 855-748-4210. So feel free to call us at the office if you have any more questions, but go to our website and check us out. We have a lot of information there.
Awesome. And one last question for you. Why do you serve the industry, and why did God put you in this place?
To protect freedom and liberty and our American way of life that my family and I have been so blessed to experience.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. And I recently left my home country and have vowed to protect this one till
I
my
love it.
last breath.
Yeah, me too. That's
So
wonderful.
I'm,
Well, I will see you in Washington, D.C. in about a
yes,
month.
can't
I'm
wait.
excited to meet you in person.
Yes, you too. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Um, yeah, great conversation. And I'm sure that we'll have a lot more of these in DC.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks to all who are watching or listening. If you want to learn more, links are provided in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe to North American Ag Spotlight on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Listen Notes, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you like the episode, I would love it if you shared it. And have a great day. Thanks so much for listening to today's Ag Spotlight episode, where we put the spotlight on people and companies doing great things for the agricultural industry. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Stitcher, or on your favorite podcasting platform, and give us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on YouTube and Rumble to see the video version of Ag Spotlight. Also, head on over to NorthAmericanAg.com to subscribe to our Industry Connect update newsletter. If you're interested in advertising opportunities, email us at connect@NorthAmericanAg.com. Thanks for listening.